We have some developing news right now. This morning out of Central California, a 5.8 magnitude earthquake just struck near Lone Pine. That's according to the USGS. And some people right here in Las Vegas say they also felt the quake. Now, Lone Pine is about an hour north of Ridgecrest and about 3 hours from the valley. Now, you might remember last year a 7.1 earthquake hit almost around the same exact time in Ridgecrest, causing some damage.
We begin in Mexico, where a magnitude 7.4 earthquake hit the southern coastline Tuesday. At least 5 people were killed and many others were evacuated. So let's go live to our correspondent, Alastair Baverstock in Mexico City. Alastair, morning from Beijing. Well, first of all, give us the latest.
Well, very good morning to you. So far, as you mentioned, we've only seen 5 people confirmed dead and perhaps 30 more have been injured in this earthquake. But it was quite a ride. It went for anything between 90 seconds to 2 minutes. And as you mentioned, 7.4 earthquake is no joke. The buildings were swaying around me, people very scared in the street, and windows, a lot of them breaking around us as this earthquake went on. 7.4 is no joke, but for Mexico, the way the country was able to handle it was due in part to its pre-warning system. The epicenter of the earthquake happened down on the Oaxaca coast. That's more than 800 kilometers from Mexico City. And because Mexico City and the rest of the country have very sensitive earthquake sirens, which go off very loudly to alert the population, by the time that the tremors arrived here in Mexico City, the
floating structures crashed into a bridge in Serbia, destroying them in seconds. The houses and other vessels were set afloat after heavy flooding struck the Eastern European country. It's just one of several recent instances where Mother Nature seems to be making a point. On the French island of Corsica, flash floods swamped the streets. Emergency services had to rescue several drivers stranding by the raging waters. In early June, a cyclone struck the west coast of India. The powerful storm ripped the roofs off buildings and uprooted trees. A recent intense lightning storm off the coast of Athens, Greece, was captured in time-lapse photographs. Weather near Athens has also caused heavy hail and flooding. In the UK, torrential rains caused flooding in the English city of Birmingham. Heavy rains also caused flooding in central China. Cars were nearly submerged as this boy tried in vain to keep out the water with a broom. But some parts of the U.S. have the opposite problem. With the dry summer season in effect, arid Arizona saw several wildfires. Crews on the land and in the air battled to contain the brush fire near Phoenix. Planes dumped hundreds of gallons of flame retardant on a fire in Arizona's Tonto National Forest.
Every wildfire season in Arizona is serious, and this year's no different. 2020 has brought heightened wildfire activity, as well as the added challenge of keeping crews and responders healthy as we continue to work to contain the spread of COVID-19.
Brush and forest fires also flared up in Siberia. The Russian region is usually one of the coldest in the northern hemisphere. But this year, temperatures there have reached upwards of 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The record heat wave has allowed dozens of fires to burn in the region. In Indonesia, the Mount Merapi volcano erupted twice, sending masses of smoke and ash high into the sky. A volcano in Ecuador's Amazon region spewed ash over nearby forests and towns. Dust from the Sangay volcano also threatens larger towns in the region. A massive dust cloud is threatening the Caribbean, Central America, and the eastern United States. The cloud, which originated in the Sahara Desert, is being called the, quote, Godzilla cloud by some experts. It may reduce visibility and affect air quality, a problem especially for those with respiratory issues.
China has ordered flood control and emergency rescue efforts to be stepped up along the Yangtze River. Lives and properties are at risk following days of torrential rain. Now, tens of thousands have been evacuated, with more rain forecast for the coming days, and alerts have been issued across a wide area of China.
Continuous rainstorms have swelled rivers to dangerous levels and flooded large parts of China's southern, northwestern and eastern regions. 3 people have already died after heavy rain triggered flash floods in Guizhou province. Power supply and telecommunication networks were also cut. Rising waters in Hubei trapped residents in their villages and communities. Rescue teams had to travel door to door in boats to search for those stranded. In Hunan province alone, more than 60,000 people were displaced. Crops, roads, bridges and school buildings were damaged. In Anhui province, rain-triggered landslides at a dam led to a breach that caused a nearly 10-meter surge of water to spill over.
Esta es la peor inundación que hemos vivido. De todos estos 10 años que vivimos acá en el Trapiche y otros viven 20. Pues, de los niños, de los ancianos, de los jóvenes. Pero todavía no hay. Y los niños están tristes, están llorando, están asustados. Pero en este momento los estamos llevando al hospital, al centro de salud. Ahí van a tener una atención de nuestra olla común que está al frente del hospital.
Sí, señor, necesitamos ayuda ahorita de la alcaldía, que mira, aquí estamos todos inundados, nos mojado todo adentro, nuestras camas, todos estamos mojados ahorita.
No tienen ropa, colchas, todo se lo han mojado adentro.
Nos está haciendo frío, mami, ya ahorita todos mojados estamos allá.
Flotando los autingos.
Estamos totalmente inundados aquí en el puente.
Well, as Matinka said, the heavy rain is leading to flash flooding all around Des Moines. KCCI's Marcus McIntosh has been out around the city. Marcus, what are you seeing? Be careful out there.
Right now we're on Hickman Road, right near Prospect Park, and you can see west of us, I'm going to step out of the way for you as well. There are 4 cars that stalled out in high rainwater down there that kind of pooled up in the street. Now, since we've gotten here, the water has fallen maybe 3, 4, 5 inches because the cars have been there for some time. We're being told by people who are in that situation that, they couldn't see. The rain was coming down so fast and so hard that by the time they got into the water, it was too late. One person told us that cars kept driving past her, and that's the lady who was in the car with the blinking lights right there. She said cars were driving past her in the opposite direction and kind of swooshing her around. So she said it was a very, very scary situation. She's so thankful for Des Moines firefighters who came in there, got her out of her vehicle, and walked her back up the street to somebody who was waiting to pick her up and take her home.
Good evening. I'm Jamie Yukas in Los Angeles. Record jumps in coronavirus infections on top of mixed messages from political leaders and health experts are putting American shutdown sacrifices to the test. Tonight, known cases are up in at least 30 states, especially across the Sun Belt. These states you see here, some that raced to reopen, are now retreating. Others have hit pause. Coronavirus cases in the U.S. have now reached more than 2.5 million. The death toll above 125,000. That's the worst of any other country in the world. CBS's Janet Chamberlain is in Houston and leads us off.
Jamie, coronavirus hospitalizations are hitting new highs. Here in Houston, intensive care units are full, and officials are calling it an uncontrollable spread. Tonight, Texas is hitting the brakes. Bars across the Lone Star State are shut down tonight.
We don't know how long we're going to be closed for this round. It could be weeks or months.
And a reversal for restaurants, scaling back to 50% capacity.
It doesn't look like we're going to be over this anytime soon.
A drastic retreat by Governor Greg Abbott, who late Friday expressed regret about reopening.
If I could go back and redo anything, it probably would have been to slow down the opening of bars.
As cases surge, Houston's Baylor St. Luke's just opened a 4th COVID ward.
Been here 25 years, cannot remember a medical disaster where we had the volume and the intensity and a new disease.
The virus also has Florida backtracking. All Miami beaches will close for the July 4th weekend. And the state has suspended drinking alcohol at bars after what the governor called widespread noncompliance. Today, Florida reported its highest number of new daily cases since the pandemic started, 9,585. In Miami Beach, there are long lines for tests. Transmission now driven by those between 18 and 35.
People want to be social. They want to interact, and that's why you're seeing it so much with the younger folks.
Florida and Texas among the first to reopen, now trying to close that door.
Dana, good morning. California, Texas, and Florida are in crisis. The number of U.S. coronavirus cases is surging to record highs, and many states are actually reversing their reopenings. At the same time, the White House is trying to paint a picture that the virus is under control. In his opening remarks at Friday's coronavirus task force meeting, Vice President Mike Pence looked to assure the nation that this time is different.
We have made truly remarkable progress in moving our nation forward.
Touting a recent jobs report, the vice president said all 50 states are opening up safely and responsibly, and that the country had flattened the curve from the initial COVID-19 outbreak in March.
The reality is we're in a much better place.
Stay home.
Harris County, Texas Judge Lena Hidalgo had a more urgent message, with hospitals in the Texas Medical Center now reporting intensive care units 100% full. Harris County is reimposing stay-at-home orders.
Our situation is far worse today than when we issued the first stay-home order in Harris County and when the state issued their first stay-home order. This is unacceptable.
Texas reported more than 5,100 COVID patients are currently hospitalized, another record high for the 15th consecutive day. On Friday, Texas Governor Greg Abbott ordered bars across the state to close again. They're an environment he now says stokes the virus.
If I could go back and redo anything, it probably would have been to slow down the opening of bars. Now seeing in the aftermath of how quickly the coronavirus spread in the bar setting.
Governor Ron DeSantis announced a similar order in Florida.
People want to be social. They want to interact. And that's
his state reported nearly 9,000 new coronavirus cases. That's a 62% increase from Florida's previous record set earlier this week. In response, Miami-Dade County will close its beaches next Friday ahead of the 4th of July weekend. 31 states have reported a jump in cases compared to 2 weeks ago.
In Florida, weeks of surging coronavirus cases just reached a new high watermark, almost 9,000 cases in one day, leading Governor Ron DeSantis to pull the plug on bars.
There was widespread noncompliance, and that led to issues.
In sunny Miami-Dade, the mayor announcing the beaches will close for the July 4th holiday, as Miami Beach's mayor already bracing residents for potentially severe rollbacks down the road.
But we're the hot spot, and we remain the hot spot. We don't have a lot in our toolkit to stop this, short of the prophylactic decision to shutter the economy, which we really don't want to do.
Closing down again would be unimaginable for one Delray Beach bartender.
You cannot keep shutting down a town or a city or a state or a country and expect things to just come back to normalcy. It's never going to happen.
Texas taking an even more aggressive stance, with Governor Greg Abbott closing bars and reducing capacity at restaurants on the heels of infection rates hitting double digits.
And as we come on the air tonight, the coronavirus hitting all-time highs in parts of the U.S. More than 2.5 million cases, now more than 125,000 lives lost. Florida's numbers soaring out of control, hitting a new record high of more than 9,600 cases in 24 hours. Miami-Dade County set to close beaches over the 4th of July weekend. A surge in cases forcing Texas to roll back its reopening plans. More than 5,700 new cases in one day alone. The 5th day of cases topping 5,000. One of the largest hospitals in Arizona activating surge plans to handle COVID cases. And sad news tonight about 101-year-old Jean O'Brien, the mother of 9 making headlines for beating the coronavirus. Her family says she passed away, weakened by her battle and the isolation of quarantine. Washington State tonight hitting pause on counties about to begin phase 4 of reopening. 23 states now seeing an increase in hospitalizations. ABC's Trevor Ault leads us off tonight.
Tonight, coronavirus cases skyrocketing to new records. Florida logging more than 18,000 new cases in the past 48 hours. More than 9,600 infections today alone, a new high. Thousands now showing up to get tested, some people lining up just after midnight, waiting nearly 9 hours. In Miami-Dade County, beaches closing for the upcoming 4th of July weekend as Florida bars are now banned from serving alcohol.
All of a sudden, we can't even have a cocktail outside. I'm not even near anybody. This is really getting out of hand.
Compliance officers now on hand to enforce restrictions.
You guys can't pass out those menus. You can have patrons order off of this menu.
In New York, a travel advisory from high-risk states, including Florida. And health officials say a person who just traveled from there is infected and may have exposed several people to the virus at a drive-in graduation ceremony in Westchester. 4 others now testing positive. While in Michigan,
free country, we do what we want to do.
Thousands gathering for one of the country's largest boat parties. Law enforcement saying they won't enforce social distancing. Elsewhere in the state, a new outbreak linked to a single restaurant in East Lansing, not far from Michigan State University. More than 85 people infected, all of them between the ages of 16 and 28, and 80 diagnosed after going to the restaurant.
Breaking news, we have just learned the European Union will ban travelers from America, saying the virus is not sufficiently under control here. Here's ABC's senior foreign correspondent Ian Pennell from London.
Tonight, ABC News confirms Americans are set to be banned from Europe, as first reported by the New York Times. The paper says most US citizens will be barred along with other countries considered too risky because they've not controlled the coronavirus outbreak. Even so, the World Health Organization warning of a very significant resurgence of coronavirus in Europe. And Britain's on alert again after these shocking scenes at a South Coast beach on Thursday. So crowded, the police declaring a major incident. And in Liverpool, more mass gatherings as soccer fans celebrate a championship title. Now, Prime Minister Boris Johnson warning people must follow the rules, making what appears to be a sideswipe at America.
Some parts of the world, I won't name them, but you've got spikes, really serious spikes in the incidence of the disease.
And here in Britain, those risks only look set to rise when pubs and restaurants reopen next weekend.
Now let's move out west. It is time for people to go home. Those were the words of the mayor of Seattle, pledging to work with community leaders to peacefully dismantle the part of the city that's still occupied by protesters, better known as CHOP. ABC's Kaylee Hartung is live on the ground in Seattle, and she joins us now with more. Kaylee, what are things like where you are right now?
Yeah, so Lindsay, it was now 2 weeks ago that Seattle police left the East Precinct just a couple blocks behind me here, and these barricades came up. But truthfully, it is hard to answer very simple questions about what is going on here because it is a complex situation with a lot of layers to it. I was really struck when I walked up to the zone from this side and saw this list of demands here from protesters, some of whom were the first to be in these streets, saying they want the Seattle police defunded, they want that money going back to black communities, and they want all protesters freed and those charges dropped against them. There is still artwork here that reminds you why this began. You'll see this incredible Black Lives Matter mural on this street behind me here. But what we're also learning is that the violence you're hearing about happening here, the violence that the mayor is citing as the reason why the police need to come back, many people are saying we're here in a major American city. This is an imperfect society and violence and crime will happen, but because there is a spotlight on this community, on these 6 blocks, it has given the mayor reason to use that as an excuse and bring the police back here. But Lindsay, it is becoming harder and harder to find voices here who can articulate why they remain. What is clear here is that there's no leadership and there is no longer the unified message that once brought people to these streets.
And so what happens next? And how can city leaders peacefully shut this area down then?
And so that's the question that no one knows an answer to right now. As I told you, that East Precinct is just a couple blocks this way. Now, people here tell me they knew eventually the police would come back. And now the question is, you say, how will they come here and have these people leave? Well, if you look around here, look to my right here, these tents that have popped up on this park. You can hear a man playing drums he's assembled. They're behind me. Again, it's unclear who has taken hold of this space. Like I said, a complex issue with a lot of layers to it. And now when the police the police chief has said that the use of pepper spray and any chemical agents that is banned through September. Force cannot be used here. Police are only allowed to use any sort of those chemical weapons if their life is in imminent danger. So this will be a phased process. As the police chief has said, it will take days. There is no timeline. Whatever timeline they have has not been explained to us. And there are a lot of questions here. What you see right now, this atmosphere that is very calm and these streets fairly empty, that's not what we're told it looks like at night. And now that's the question is what happens as different people move in depending on what hour of the day it is and how the police choose to meet the protesters they see.
In recent weeks, Facebook has drawn heavy criticism from employees and lawmakers over its inaction to inflammatory posts by the president. But in the end, it's advertisers that have forced the social media giant's hand. Unilever, the British-Dutch company behind such brands as Dove, Ben & Jerry's, Lipton and Marmite, has announced it is suspending ads on Facebook's platforms until the end of the year. Meanwhile, Coca-Cola says it's taking a 30-day pause to reassess its advertising policies. The move has pushed Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg to backtrack on his hands-off approach to political advertising. He now says content that Facebook finds newsworthy that violates its policies will be flagged.
There's no newsworthy exemption to content that incites violence or suppresses voting. Even if a politician or government official says it, if we determine the content may lead to violence or deprive people of their right to vote, we're going to take that content down, no matter who says it.
Zuckerberg had previously refused to take action against the president's posts, saying people deserve to hear unfiltered statements from political leaders. Twitter, by contrast, has slapped fact-checking labels on Donald Trump's tweets when it deems them misleading. Nonetheless, Unilever has pulled advertising from both platforms, sending their share prices tumbling. The greater policing of social media could have major implications for the US presidential election in 4 months' time. It'll not only keep the US politicians more honest, but it will also make it more difficult for foreign powers to interfere in the vote.
Malawi opposition supporters have waited a whole year to hear this announcement. Their candidate, Lazarus Chakwera, won the presidential vote.
The Commission declares that Lazarus Chakwera, the candidate who has attained 58.57% of the votes, is duly elected as President of the Republic of Malawi.
The vote was a first because 1 year ago the Electoral Commission, headed by a different person, announced the exact opposite result after a first try to hold the vote, declaring outgoing President Peter Mutharika the winner.
Of Malawi.
That decision was followed by massive protests because the vote was rigged. Correction fluid was even used on result sheets. For the second time in the history of Africa after Kenya, the case was brought to the top court, who dismissed the results, leading to the rerun. The 79-year-old outgoing president, though, says the rerun was rigged too, with his party calling for a third vote.
This election is the worst in Malawi's history of our elections.
The Electoral Commission has dismissed the complaints after examining them. President-elect Chakwera, a former priest and longtime civic rights leader, has called for unity, vowing to fight corruption, bring jobs and prosperity.
A parade was deferred back in May in Moscow. Russia's marking the 75th anniversary of victory over the Nazis. Donald Trump had originally been invited to the parade before the COVID-19 pandemic hit. Well, this week that parade was staged. Vladimir Putin taking to the rostrum, effectively saying it's thanks to Russia that the war was won.
Отстояв свою землю, продолжали сражаться, освободили от захватчиков государства Европы, положили конец страшной трагедии Холокоста, спасли от нацизма, от его смертоносной идеологии народ Германии. И невозможно даже представить, что стало бы с миром, не стань на его защиту Красная Армия.
Kelly Barbero, most historians agree Russia paid a very heavy price during World War II, 20 million dead, and they were key in beating the Nazis. Your reaction, though, when you look at that parade?
I have to say it was like baffling images because you saw, 90-year-old veterans just packing the stands alongside Putin with no masks, as if social distancing had never been invented. And at the same time, it was a show of force, right? A show of military might, and it was clearly Putin trying to do what he does best, as in giving the Russian people a feel-good moment in which they can essentially forget about the fact that the economy is in deep trouble.
A new book examines nearly 24 cardinals who are best positioned to be the successor to Pope Francis. The Next Pope by Edward Penton of EWTN's National Catholic Register takes a closer look at the cardinals who could potentially take over the chair of St. Peter after Francis's pontificate. The book from Sophia Institute Press will be available in early August. And the author, Edward Penton, joins us now from Rome. Ed, welcome to the show and congratulations on the book. That's wonderful.
Thank you, Tracy. Good to be with you.
Ed, why did you decide to write this book?
Well, I should say, first of all, Tracy, this is a collaborative effort. I actually joined the project later on. It was already in the works when I came. And it was really, the desire was to write it was really because of a sense of confusion among cardinals at the previous conclaves, that they don't really have enough information of the cardinal candidates to be Pope. And this really aims to fill that gap, not just for the cardinals, but also for the lay faithful. And to really equip the cardinals with a full knowledge of the leading candidates going into a conclave, and for the faithful also to have a good idea of who could be the possible pope and who to pray for.
Ed, you list 19 cardinals that you think are most likely successors to Pope Francis. How did you determine that list?
Well, again, this was a collaborative effort. As I say, I came to it quite late, but I did have some input into who could be put on the list. And I think it really comes down to their reputations for sanctity, teaching, and governing. The book is really split up into 3 sections for each cardinal, and they are the sanctifying office of a bishop, his governing office, and his teaching office. These are the 3 offices of the episcopal of a bishop, rather. And so this was really the essence of the book, and really to give it a fully researched account of each cardinal. It's unlike a sort of journalistic interpretation. It's more scholarly and more like an encyclopedia, if you like, of each cardinal.
What do you think the reaction will be to your book, or what do you hope the reaction will be?
Well, so far from those who've read it has been very positive. They've called it an indispensable gift and a very thoroughly researched book, and they've been very pleased, and they think it's going to be a great service to the church. Some have said that it's they're wondering why it's being produced now, and really there's no other reason than the fact that a conclave could be called at any time, but we won't have time to do all this research in a short notice that a conclave often has, which is usually about a month. So this was really done just in case there's a conclave, which could, as I say, could happen at any time, and it would then prepare the cardinals well enough in advance to know who to vote for.
Ed, you mentioned this book is a collaboration. Has anything like this been done before?
Well, funny enough, they did. I mean, this tradition actually goes back to the Middle Ages, when diplomats and reliable writers were actually given the task of doing this kind of thing. So it has a long pedigree, and so this is really nothing particularly new. And we've always seen, of course, journalists coming out with a sort of top 10 papabile. It's not really like that. It's more like those previous efforts to really help cardinals know who to vote for. So that's really the essence of the history of this.
Well, Ed, thanks so much for your time. And again, congratulations. Edward Penton, Rome correspondent for EWTN's National Catholic Register. Thanks again, Ed.